Kia ora rā tātou, kia ora rā koutou e whakarongo mai ana. Welcome to another little session of the Shift Aotearoa, talking about housing visions for Aotearoa into the future as part of VisionWeek here, which is running from the 8th till the 12th. Today I am pleased to be talking about a kaupapa, which is something like future visions for housing for Maori in Aotearoa. I've talked about it being through till 2030, but if these wonderful people I'm talking to want to take it to a different date or a longer term, that's all good too. So today I've got with me Jackie Paul and Jade Kake and Anahera Rawari. And first up, I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves in the way they'd like to. And what we've talked about is that we're just going to provide some reflections on the COVID experience and where that leaves us. So Jackie, can I start with you for a little intro and some reflections?
Ai, ngamahi kia koe, Brennan, ngā korua. Huria hau Ngāti Kanunu ki Rataunga, Ngāti Tūwharetō, me ngā pui hoki, engari e noho ana au ki Tāmaki Makaurau. He kaimahiranga hau Māori me ngā kaihoahoa whenua, ko te apuntuku ingoa. So kia ora, and thanks for having me today. Really excited to hang out with my fellow wahine Māori and have a kōrero about, our future aspirations for housing or kāinga. Did you want to quickly just do an introduction first or just straight into kind of COVID kōrero?
Why don't we do each of your introductions first, eh? That'd be nice.
Hi.
Jade?
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Jade Kake tōku ingoa, he uri hau no Ngāpuhi, te arawa, te whakatōhia, ko Ngāti hau me te parawhau ngā hapu, pihi aore te marae, kei pārua a hau e noho ana, ko he kai hoahoa, kai tuhi me kai hapai hoki, kia ora.
Kia ora, Jade.
Tēnā tātou katoa, ko Anahera tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei no tūperiri, ko Ngāti Whātua te iwi, ki kunei a hau ki runga I tōku papakanga, ki o rākei, nō reira tēnā tātou katoa.
Ka pai, pai roa, he mihi atu ki a koutou, nau mai, piki mai ki tēnei kōrero, kia ora rā. Anahera, since you've started us off with an inspirational little talk about COVID unfortunately before I started recording, why don't you just jump back into those reflections? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, sure. I think COVID's given us a bit of a platform to reassess about how we operate as Māori, and I was just saying how proud I am of the way Te Iwi Māori has really pushed through COVID. It shows how resilient we are, how determined we are to keep our people safe, to keep our environments safe. And I was just so proud of the way that Te Iwi Māori has really dealt with the COVID response. And, I think that is a sign of Māori in a position to really exercise their mana motuhake and their tino rangatiratanga wherever they are. I think in terms of a housing space, again, I live on my papakainga here in Orake, and, as soon as we got word of level 4, the whole community kicked into response mode, and it was possibly a moment in time where our community's been so close and so united in terms of just getting together and helping out people where they needed to be helped out, but also allowing our people to still be free on their lands. And, I think as we got into a few weeks into the lockdown period, we all started talking about Orake being our own bubble, and what does that look like? And we should be allowed to sort of exercise that rangatiratanga over our whenua and over our areas. And, I think as we move forward, this might happen again in a few years. And how we've responded as a community on the papakainga, but also the way that so proud at how our tribal organisation responded to those of our whānau that don't live on the papakainga. We delivered over 5,000 kaipaks across the Tāmaki region. We had vans and cars going all the way out to the kaupara, to Whangarei, to our people that are living in the north area. South Auckland, Hamilton. And, you know, you just sort of think, you know, we have the tools, we have the skills, and we have the aroha and the whanaungatanga to make sure that our people are resilient through times of crisis. Our babies, some of our babies didn't have anything to do their mahi on. So out went 350 Chromebooks, you know, into our homes for our people to be able to learn, you know. And I sort of think when we think about housing, you know, you think about the response to COVID, and we've got the answers, and we've got the everything that we need to be successful in this space. So really proud to have actually, really proud to have witnessed that. But that's just a little bit from me.
Awesome. Kia ora, Anahira. I loved your idea of like a whole new expression of rangatiratanga being the idea that you should be able to create your own, the bubble you create to protect yourself from COVID should be the size that you say it should be. And if that means a community or a marae and a papakainga, then, you know, there's a pretty good case for that, right?
Hope so.
Yeah, kia ora. Jade, do you want to have a few moments to reflect on COVID-19?
Yes, I would love to. I wanted to start by saying, Anahira, our whānau are really inspired by what you've been able to achieve up at Orake. So we actually, I know you get countless visitors, but a group of our Land Trust for Pihiawari went up to Orake just before Christmas, and our Uncle Otine showed us around because he's from there, but he's also from us here at Pihiawari. And we'd been, you know, dreaming and thinking, and it just made all of the concepts I had been talking about tenure, and we'd been talking about different typologies, and we had a whole session on it in the morning. And then when we went up to Orake, my aunties and uncles were asking and my cousins were asking really good questions. And they were like, oh, this is that thing you were talking about. Yeah, I understand now. And it was just so cool to see. And so it was a really important part of our journey for that project. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and what you've been able to achieve together there. So on to my COVID reflections. I have, internet is not good. Okay. I wonder how to fix this. I might have to go back to my main office, which is closer to my Wi-Fi thingy. I wonder, could we jump to Jackie's reflections?
Yeah. And we're okay for audio at the moment.
Should we jump to Jackie and I'll go? Okay.
Okay. Jackie, over to you.
I'll go get myself sorted. Hi, Anna. Yeah, I think it was really lovely just to hear, you know, some of your reflections, Anahira, and just feeling like even just the conditions, like I think we're in a good place, but just how far, you know, distant we are. So I, in the current conditions, really lucky, you know, grateful for a warm, dry, safe home. You know, flatting, my parents live maybe 10 minutes down the road, but just how isolated you can still feel in the types of conditions. And so just thinking about that, and just that's like the dream, right? To be able to spend time with your whānau and respond and address the needs, where I don't have that luxury more so, but I think it's also great for us to think about what it could be like. And just, you know, even this whole concept, which has been annoying me the whole time around stay home, save lives, and just how that in itself is such a privilege, more so for our, you know, whānau Maori who's struggling around, you know, homelessness and just being able to have a roof over their head and the basic needs. That's probably been a lot more prevalent, more so than my own, and thinking about, you know, how we can act as conduits within the space to connect people to ensure that they might or could have access to certain things. So a lot of reflections, but also just thinking about, you know, you spoke about being able to provide things like Chromebook and, you know, food, because I've been able to see the photos in it, but how, you know, working in institutions where they struggle to provide these types of basic things to serve our people, our whānau, our hapori. And so it's interesting that we do have the tools as a people, but we need to be able to ensure that we're resourced or have been able to exercise that rangatiratanga if we are in that kind of environment to do so. So it's interesting just for me to see what it could be like, you know, in the future of our communities. And so how do we think about embedding that in the way in which we live, whether through design and, you know, master planning. So it's now triggered all these kind of thoughts in itself. And so a long way from where I would like to be, and even just as my own kind of aspirations, but as well as our whānau, we're so spread out across the country, where we're more kind of in this position to reach out to each other, to see how we are, to check in and just, you know, think about how they're doing and their well-being, as opposed to, had we keep going a million times, you know, without the lockdown, it's really allowed us that time to just settle down and think about our own priorities. And so during the end of, I guess, level 3, level 2, we had a passing in our whānau, and obviously then you could leave the house, I guess. And so being able to go back home to the far north, to our marae, and see the way in which our people were managing tangihanga and just how responsible they are, and being able to exercise that rangatiratanga, I just felt so whole, you know, and that all these policies and all this, you know, this issues around tangihanga and trying to manage us, you know, our safety net of our kaumātua, it's there, and so allow us to do so as a people. And so, yeah, it's all these sugars that you've been talking about. I'm like, that's it, that's a dream, and that's where I want to be. So it's really great to kind of understand my position and our whānau's position, but what it might look like. So I really appreciate your kōrero today.
Kia ora, Jackie. Thanks for those reflections. Hey, Jade, you hearing us, seeing us okay?
Yes, I'm in a much more stable location for the Wi-Fi. So I'm sorry about that. So COVID, gosh, there was a lot of things that came up, I think, for me, as for everybody. I was really, like Anahera, so proud of our hapu and our whānau for the way we were able to respond. And the fact that we know where our vulnerable whānau members are and those who will need care and support. And we're able to mobilise really quickly and well. And on a personal note, the highlight of lockdown was being able to leave to do kaipaks, because it was the only time I was allowed to leave to do anything apart from go to the grocery store. And so that was really cool. And so we're really active in that respect. And it also demonstrated to me that, you know, yes, we have iwi entities, but for us in the north, that connect between iwi and hapu is what gets you into whānau and connected with whānau. So as hapu, we held all of the contact details and knew where everyone was. And that might not be true for other iwi, but because we're pre-settlement and because we're in whāngarei where we've got this mix of Ngāti Wai, Ngāpuhi, Ngāti Whātua, it was really critical for those iwi entities to be able to connect with our hapu on the ground and make sure we were reaching our whānau, especially those who are vulnerable. So awesome to see us mobilise, but it also highlighted for me just the power imbalance between the Crown and us as hapu Māori. You know, because obviously I guess we all know the government has power, but then when we're in a crisis like a pandemic, the government has a lot of power. The government can very quickly decide everybody has to stay home and all of these things are disallowed. And I support those actions given what was happening. But it's interesting because our hapu do not hold that same power over their rohe. And so we're seeing these roadblocks and things like that, which were supported to a degree, but the Prime Minister's comments were that, sure, you can do them, but the police have to be involved, which I find really troubling. And the same thing with the rules around tangihanga, seeking to set out quite prescriptive rules and then kind of loosening them because there was a lot of backlash. And it just really showed who has power and who hasn't, but who has the ability to respond and who perhaps hasn't. So the power dynamic was a big revelation for me. It really drew it, it brought it to the fore. From a design type perspective, it just made me think, I wish we already had our papakainga, because this is the exact situation, amongst many others, that we would be set up for. It reinforced for us that this long journey that we've been on is the right one, and I don't think that anybody doubted that. But when this pandemic hit, we thought we'd be so in a much better position as a whānau if we were back on our papakainga. And so we keep continuing in that direction. As a designer, I started looking over our master plan and looking over the plans of the whare and thinking of it through the lens of a COVID context. So I was thinking, so for one of the projects that I'm working on with my whānau, we've got this mega whare, which is similar to the townhouses at Orake, where it's under one big roof, but there's 3 different dwellings. So there's like a 2-bed, a 4-bed, 4 to 5 bed, and then there's a 1-bed above a garage. And they're configured so they're all kind of offset. But underneath the 1-bed, there's the shared garage, which has a bathroom and a laundry. And I thought that would be really fantastic in a pandemic situation. And you've got someone who's an essential worker, because they can come straight home, wash their clothes, shower without going into the rest of the house. And same with the separate 1-bedroom. It could be for essential workers, or it could be for those who need to be isolated. And so I started looking through all my work through that lens. And I mean, I don't know how likely another pandemic is, but it really was interesting to reevaluate your own work on the basis of what was a very present crisis. And I found that these principles for papakainga and the way our whānau want to live do mean that we're able to be resilient and protected in a range of situations, including a pandemic. So it was quite a nice process of reflection.
Interesting reflections. I feel like Jade, you and Anahira have both reflected on, and I'm going to paraphrase and summarize viciously, but kind of reflected on papakainga experiences. One which is particularly urban, Ngāti Whātua Orake. I'm not quite sure of the urbanness or otherwise of your papakainga environment, Jade. And then on the other hand, Jackie's reflecting on, I guess, what is in a sense another side of the coin, which is this idea of a dispersed whānau across the country, which is, the COVID experience really makes it difficult to keep in touch with. So thanks for those reflections. I think it's a nice way to maybe introduce a new question, which is something along the lines of, because I do want to set us up for a conversation about our visions for the future. So what I want to do is try and understand better what kind of outcomes Māori are experiencing in the housing space today. And I'm not calling on any of you to be experts beyond what you already are, and I'm also not saying you're not experts, because you obviously are in your own fields. But I want to paint a picture for the audience of what are typical issues that Māori are facing in the housing space, and certainly like to touch on the barriers to housing on ancestral land, as well as some of those more urban issues. So can anyone pick up that baton and have a crack at it?
I have many thoughts, but does someone else want to go, seeing as I just spoke?
I can pick up a little bit, but I'm sort of thinking about Jackie's probably the expert in this stuff. But one of the things that sort of was quite glaringly obvious earlier on was the homelessness issue, and what that response looked like. And again, it's true, touching on the fact that the government has so much power in this space. It's, I suppose we're used to it. We're conditioned to the government having this type of authority over us. But, when you live through COVID in papakainga environments, you realise how strong you are and how resilient you are as a people. And I've got some children walking in the door. I'm going to have to pass it to Jackie real quick. They found the key.
Kia ora, Anahira.
Kia ora, Anahira. I guess just through some of our mahi, homelessness and the kind of political will and the money now. All of a sudden we can house our, whānau experiencing homelessness. And so I'm sure there are many advocates over the last few years have been trying to fight for this. So it's amazing that kind of shift in such a short turnaround dependent on this crisis, some might say, however you want to call it. And it's been interesting just to see, okay, what does this look like long term? Is this sustainable? what's next after, I think Minister Megan Wood said maybe April next year. So it's all these types of issues that we're seeing specifically for homelessness, but even just my own whānau, like just the conditions, my auntie, she had 18 people in her home during COVID on ancestral lands. It's like a shack shed thing, open plan, no walls, but water, power, long drop, and so it's these types of conditions that I could do all the work in this space, but it's when it's your own people, your own whānau, where you see the struggle, and so it continues to push in this space. So a lot going on and a long way to go. So it'll be interesting to see, after this kind of $40 million investment into the Māori housing kaupapa, what that looks like and how that manifests.
Kia ora. There's an interesting balance there, isn't there? Because there has been a certain idea floating around, or a perception that COVID-19 has put us all back into our houses, and people have had really positive experiences of that, and it's maybe brought families closer together. But it's really important to remember that wasn't necessarily a positive experience for a lot of people, or for some maybe it was a positive experience, even though they had 18 people in a house that wasn't really fit for that. But, I guess there's a diversity of experiences. And before I throw back to you, Jade, let's just pick up at some point this recurrent theme about the power imbalance, and what could be talked about or surfaced in a conversation like this. In terms of like what your expectations might be. Obviously, we know there's a government that's a fait accompli, but there's a certain expectation that power is distributed in a slightly different way in New Zealand, in our society, right? And you guys have expressed a little bit of surprise or disappointment at it. So let's pick that up another time, maybe in this conversation, maybe another day. But yeah, Jade. So what's your view of sort of current experiences in housing for Māori?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, our housing issues as Māori have not shifted significantly for many decades. And so, we've still been dispossessed from the majority of our lands. We still experience this mass urbanization process, and I've heard different views on that. I mean, to some degree it was coercive, and to some degree, Māori did have agency in that process. But I think understanding the wider context where we were encouraged to leave our land so they could be made available for settlers, and to concentrate that workforce in the cities is a really important piece of context for understanding how we got to where we are now. And so now we're in a position where probably a majority of whānau who do live on whenua Māori, on ancestral lands, live in substandard housing. Unfortunately, that is a majority, and people, especially here in the North and on the East Cape, live in housing that would be considered uninhabitable by urban standards. But it is owned housing, and it is debt-free, and it is on whenua Māori. And then, and there's all sorts of health issues that go along with living in housing of that standard. And then we have got a very large urban population that are mostly mātāwaka or not from that area. And, if we look at there are some Māori that are doing fine and perhaps have decent incomes and have owned housing, which often is, I guess, a bit of a gamble or luck around when you happen to be able to enter the housing market, which is, it's closing and more inaccessible to the vast majority of people, Māori or not. But given Māori have lower incomes on average, that access to stable housing, which is what we're really talking about when we talk about owned housing, is not available. And the rental regulations aren't great. So it means that if you can't access owned housing, then you're accepting instability and likely a poorer quality of housing, might not be appropriately configured, might not be healthy. And so, I think we've got kind of issues urban and rural. And then we've also got the huge issue of urban homelessness. And Jackie raised an important point. Amazing how we can suddenly house everybody that needs to be housed. Amazing how we can suddenly do it, even though advocates have been banging on for such a long time about this issue that's growing. But there wasn't the political will to implement until we're faced with a crisis that affects the majority and those that hold power. And so that was actually very disappointing that suddenly we can mobilize. So we always had the resources, but it's a problem of how they're distributed. I think you might be muted.
Lovely point to end that little kōrero, Jade, and a wrap of your guys' thoughts about sort of that, where we're actually at today. And I've got to admit, as a Pākehā, I've got a real trepidation about what's happening, and our colonial history really comes to the fore actually when you see something like homelessness, which has been such a big issue for such a long time, and so many people have been advocating for resources and real attention. Suddenly those resources appear because there's a new crisis and there's enough will for the government to be seen to be doing the right thing, whatever that is. And I agree with you. I mean, I've been in the same space as well, Jade, where you've kind of been advocating for this stuff, and actually to see it resolved so quickly and so suddenly, it's a bit problematic. It's not very, there's something kind of scary about it. But it just puts you in mind that, wait a minute, this crisis that we've been talking about, homelessness, just taking as an example, it really could have been solved at any moment in the past 5 years, right? And that's a real indictment on our government and our state, I think. So enough from me. But I do want to just pick up on another point, Jade, because again, it's probably a kaupapa for another day. This idea of the unknown history, which I know in this group we know well, but the alienation of Maori land, the titling of Maori land and the way that happened, and then also the urbanization, which, contrary to probably popular belief, wasn't just a choice of people deciding to go to the city to get a job. It was supported by all sorts of regulatory mechanisms, and we're seeing the lasting impact, as Dr. Jackson has reflected on, and many other people have. So thanks for those amazing reflections, you all. So I guess next, and time goes quick. We've got 25 minutes to go. So let's talk quickly about, without actually kind of going directly to your vision, what are the things that you think can actually change in the next, well, let's say, because we've seen government move so fast in the last 4 months, what do you think could change in the next 6 months, including an election? But then what do you think could change in the next 5 or 10 years that could really improve housing outcomes for Maori? And Anahera, do you want to have a crack at this one?
What can change for us in the next 5 to 10 years? I truly believe that from COVID, we've got the answers, and we've been saying that for a long time, is that Māori have the answers for their people. So hoatu te mana ki te Māori, mo te Māori, is what I would say. And, I always sort of micro in on us as an example from an iwi position, because that's what we've had to do, is when there's, when you can't loan because of the way the land's structured, you have to find ways to provide for your people. And we're lucky as a post-settlement entity that we have something that we can utilize. We have the putea to be able to exercise that mana motuhake for ourselves. But, when you look at Māori across the board, we have the answers, Pehi Awiri has the answers. They know what they need to do on their papakainga, and there's barriers. There are always barriers along the way, but we have the answers. And so now it's about, and I think we've proven through COVID, is that with the proper resource for us to be able to enable our mana motuhake, we can do it, So that would be my little bit is that give the mana back to the people for them to decide how that resource is spent in terms of the housing. Yeah.
Awesome. Kia ora. Jade or Jackie?
Yeah, I guess just off the back of Anahira, I really want to emphasize those kind of key points around power, resource, and knowledge. Yeah, and acknowledging those three key points right now around power. Like, there are opportunities where you can literally go and partner with iwi hapu marae as well, you know, but there's so many barriers even to that. Mental barriers, some may say as well. Ideological barriers, even more so. And so it's these types of structures and systems that are put in place that inhibit our opportunities and our potential for us as a people. Resources, now we know what's, you know, the Crown and everyone across this nation are capable of. So now there's no excuse to rethink and reimagine the way in which we work in the near future. And knowledge systems. It doesn't work, existing ones. And, you know, if our people are included in these processes, you know, to work unified in this process to ensure and deliver housing, we can do it. But again, I think there was a key point that Anahira raised around housing financialisation for us as a people. There's certain, you know, mechanisms at a micro scale where we can fund individuals. Why can't, you know, why kainga ora or, you know, Crown underwriting those types of loans to maximise, you know, their capability as the iwi hapu to be able to build for their people. And so I think there's some kind of internal things where we can rethink things. And even just through some of the workshops that we're doing around housing, the policies and, you know, things in place are, let's be honest, really racist and discriminatory to our people. We're just trying to survive at this stage, let alone thrive. And so it's all these types of things where those are the types of opportunities where we need to keep in sight, because all the political bullshit, some may say, is just really chopping us down, and you just lose sight of that. So I think this, you know, conversations like these allow us to fuel that fire and continue to understand what is out there. And so you know, for me personally as well, I've just been able to see the mahi that Anahira and Jade continue to do. It assures me that that's what's possible for even just us as a whānau, hapu, iwi, and the opportunities for marae in this conversation. So I always feel mobilised and inspired by our fellow wahine Māori in this conversation, but it's these types of things where we need to be shifting and shaking what is out there. So I know that's a lot to unpack, but I think just those three key points in terms of where we could start pulling, dismantling all of the above, there's really great opportunity for that.
Awesome. Hey, I'd like to throw a challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer Jade the opportunity to respond to that question as well. But while she's doing that, I'd like Anahira and Jackie to, I'm just going to reflect back to you. So you've both talked about barriers in your last kōrero, and I'd like to be able to come back to you and say, can you name a barrier or two that, you know, in sort of relatively specific terms, and so that's one thing. And then I think the second to you is Jackie, can you, when I come back to you, can you articulate some of these, and I don't at all want to sound like I'm disagreeing with you, some of these suggestions of racism or systemic oppression, or however you want to frame it, just so that we can get an idea of the kind of thing you're talking about, but more importantly, the kind of thing Māori are facing in the New Zealand housing system on a day-to-day basis. So if I can just give Jade a few minutes to respond, and then we'll come back to you guys on those two questions. Ka pai. Kia ora, Jade.
Kia ora. So I feel that actually kainga ora is both the risk and the opportunity, and this has been true since this idea was proposed. And so what I would like to see in this 10-year vision is actually kainga ora working in partnership with mana whenua at whatever level is appropriate in terms of they determine their level of participation. So that could be right from the top governance down to having their uri being the contractors, driving the diggers, building the houses, and everything in between. So that absolutely needs to be strengthened. But I think the next part would be a planned or managed transition where that land that has now been developed is handed back. And that's how we get the land back. So kainga ora has got huge powers to compulsorily acquire land, consolidate land holdings, reroute existing infrastructure, you know, circumvent consenting. They can do a lot. And so I think if this was really managed well and in genuine partnership, acknowledging that appropriate balance of power, then I think we could really do something. So that's what I'd love to see, because I think the heart of it for me is that we've got barely any land left. And all of, the land is the economic base. And if we don't have the land, it's really hard for us to provide for our people. And then moving on to the scraps of land we do have left, I think the finance reform is really key. And so I think if there was a really concerted effort, and maybe this fits into the next 6-month thing, to actually do what Māori have been saying for a very long time, which is reform kāinga whenua so that it actually works, because it's a failed product. And it's received such little political attention because they think, well, you've got no power, you've only got tiny scraps of land left anyway, much of it is uneconomic and not serviced. Why would we bother about this? And the banks have no real reason to respond either, because for the one bank that offers it, this isn't a great product for them. They've got so little in terms of lending, and probably the few that they have are problematic for them. And again, they don't have to resolve the securitization issue and offer decent finance to Māori because we own such a small scrap of land. And so it gets ignored. And so I think if you undertook comprehensive finance reform and thought about kāinga whenua as well as what other alternatives might need to exist, and I've been pretty hot for a while on this idea of an equity pool, like an impact investment equity pool. And I know others are furthering that in the general space. And then to think about how that could be applied as development finance, both for whenua Māori, but also on general title land, where iwi o hapu are at the helm, possibly in partnership with kāinga ora. So those are my 2 big ones.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I'm tempted to try and unpack, really, for anyone who might listen to this, apart from the 4 of us, what the issues around finance on Māori land are. I mean, just to summarise them really briefly, can you summarise the barrier really briefly for us?
Yeah, happy to do so. It's just because the land is collectively held, and our land tenure system and the finance that goes with it is really based on individual ownership. And as a side note, it's quite interesting because that's also linked with our political system, although that's no longer the requirement for central government. That was how voting was initially apportioned. And also our rating is what feeds into what happens at a local government level. And although you can't say that you only get a say if you're a ratepayer, it's interesting who actually actively engages in local government processes. It's usually ratepayers. And so I think that's quite an important note. So much is founded on individual property ownership. And so with whenua Māori, it's communally or collectively held, and it means that they can't sell your land if you default. And so because the way kāinga whenua is set up, there's no other mechanism for securitization, and there's many other ways this could be structured, but the way it's structured now means that you have to build the home so it can be physically removed, which is obviously insane. Also, the lending rates are much too low. They haven't refreshed them for a long time, and it's something like 200K, which nobody could build a house for. I don't know if that's the same policy they're implying internally, but it's certainly on their front-facing documents, which again tells me how much care and interest there is in this product.
Kia ora. So I'm just going to sort of whakakapi that kōrero from a kind of a Pākehā perspective, I guess, which is to say, so this was started by a legislative process in 1860, the alienation of Māori land into collective title, and these problems with securitization. And what Jade's really digging down to, I think, is it's a big priority for Māori who own Māori title land, but seems to have been impossible to really get the government to pay attention to it, potentially, Jade, as you're saying, because of the small amounts of Māori land that are left, but also maybe there's some colonial biases still at play there, I'd say too. So thanks, Jade, for setting all that out for us. So Jackie and Anahira, I left you with a challenge to kind of think about a particular barrier that you could explain for us, and Jackie, a particular idea about, or a particular example of this kind of racism in the system. So either one of you.
Yeah, I think inherently everything Jade said is, and why there is a why claim actually around the financialisation for Māori in terms of a kaupapa inquiry. And so that's a summary that, from her. And because, last night I was thinking about, this concept of ownership. And the fact that at 16 you can own a gun or a firearms license, right? But you can't own a home. And I'm just like, when you start thinking about these types of narratives, which is inherent in the way in which, tools or acts of colonization, which continue to dispossess us as a people, it's all layers and layers and based, because of how this country is built on this history of injustices. Like, let's be really clear. And also I would like to, as a disclaimer, highlight that these opinions are my own. As an independent of kainga, I wish to express these and ensure, so just to caveat that. But I think, it's really important. Why are we designing with Maori, communities and houses, but not for their people? We're going to make this nice, we're going to do all these great master planning, but there's no targeted proportion, for that hapu or iwi who you're working with. So I think there's different types of models, which could be whakapapa based, where actually we are allocating a certain proportion, but also a differentiation around affordability and the way in which that is measured. We know that we do not make as much as the European in terms of income, and so if those things, were more targeted because of the past neglect of policy, but we're more targeted, in specific provisions which aim to, respond and support the needs of whānau Māori across the nation, then I think we would start, this type of stepping stone and milestones towards ensuring that we get our whānau into safe and secure homes. But, it's always going to come back to land and this discussion, and until we address that's not inherently going to change, and our people will continue to, fall out of home ownership, be stuck in the public housing, wait list, let alone the stock, because we aren't building enough homes. Or on the other end, where we're either going to, spend generations and not break cycles of those experiencing homelessness. So we continue to be marginalised as a whole. And so I think that's really important to paint that picture. But I think we're in a interesting kind of climate politically around how we shift that. So I think, even just us four collectively, there's a lot of, if you take this part and Jade, you do that part, I think, we can start shifting and shaking things, because, there are people out there who are starting to get it, and we need that. We need everyone to get it and be on the same page and ensure that, even not just for us as Māori, but for the nation, that we have these basic needs that we all have rights to.
Awesome, kia ora. It reminds me of something I heard the other day about the idea of mobilising the Māori caucus in Parliament, which doesn't, we'd probably like to hear more from in a political sense. So, Anahera, do you have a whakaaro on barriers or barriers?
Yeah, hei tāpiri ki e rā kōrero. As a settled iwi, again, all of our land's held in trust. You can never sell the land. That's sort of like a bottom liner. You can't sell the land, which again means that you can't secure money on it. So I think kainga ora does open up a whole lot of opportunity. And ideally, in my mind, like when they got given all that money, you sort of think, well, then they should be guided by iwi, or they could be guided by iwi, to be the developer on our terms, on our land, because basically it's just a capital turnaround. They're just sort of building and then they leave. And we're the ones that are here with these things on our land. So there is an opportunity there, I think. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, or how I've got ideas on how I think it should be done. But, whether or not we can make it happen that way, that's one thing. Because for us, COVID has also forced us to rethink about what we're spending our money on as an iwi organisation, because we're here for, the future generations, 100 years, 500 years. And we need to make sure that we sort of have something, tomorrow and next week and next year. And so we've really had to rethink about what we're prioritising for our people. And, to build in Tamaki Makaurau costs a lot of money. And so there's a lot of capital to be spent on bricks and mortar. And when some of our people are crying out for help, and it's not in form of a of bricks and mortar, where do you prioritise that? And that's where I think there's an opportunity for the government. But I've been saying this for a while, is like, the financing mechanism for iwi to actually build something when, we've known for the last how many years that there's a housing crisis and that the government needs houses. Māori need homes, give us the opportunity to do this. Like, you've got the money, even if it's a backing, a financial backing where we can offset loans of, loans for the house on papakainga. So I think there's a whole lot of ways to work with these organisations, because, especially for us, it's around the money, but also then you get down to the income. The income of our people to be able to afford to live here. In no way should our people not be in a position to live comfortably on their own papakainga. That to me is like, in the future, you would hope that never happens. Māori should be able to live comfortably on their own lands, and that's with kai, that's with homes, that's with water, and so that's sort of, disclaimer, those are my whakaaro too. But I think there's opportunity with some of the government direction at the moment, especially with kāinga ora, been given all these powers, because that's, again, mana motuhake. We should be able to live comfortably on our own lands.
Kia ora, Anahera. Just a nice note to finish on as well for that particular kōrero, because I was thinking earlier when Jade was talking, boy, it'd be great if we could find some way of really surfacing some clarity about the powers kāinga ora has. And not just by telling people to read the legislation, but by actually putting some articulation and something people can understand around it, because I agree. I mean, it's new legislation, but also the range of powers they have is not well understood. So,
and one other thing, sorry, can I just say around kāinga ora again, because just picking up with what Jackie said, is that when kāinga ora is going into communities where there are iwi or there are hapu and there are marae, what is their engagement with those people? Because, everything tells you that when someone is close to their marae, to their papakainga, you get better social outcomes. And so to me, it's just like, well, of course, if you're building houses in whāngarei, you go to those people and try and find a way that you can house the people, house those people there, the people from that area in that place where they're close to their support base. And again, with this prioritization of clients, and you just sort of think, are we having this conversation? We all know that if Orake people are housed in Orake and our list is going up, just at the same rate as percentage rate as the government one goes up, so does ours. People wanting to come home, wanting to live closer to their support base. And you just sort of think, I can't believe we're still having the conversation about whānau and where they're being housed. So, that's another funny thing that I think we've got to iron out.
Kia ora, amazing. I just want to reflect on this idea that you three have all kind of painted today, I think, which is, it's a little bit complicated, but if you think of it through the kāinga ora lens or a government agency lens, or if you have a view of New Zealand that the government is the government, they're supposed to be all powerful, and do the things that they think should be done, then it looks really hard to integrate that with good partnership with iwi. It looks like that would be a hard thing to do. But if you look at the world as if, wait a minute, New Zealand is about a treaty partnership between iwi and the Crown, and everything should be done through that lens, then suddenly it looks really easy to think of kāinga ora doing exactly what you've explained, Anahera, which is, first and foremost, not last and least, but first and foremost, building that iwi relationship, and which is proxy for a local relationship, right? Anyway, I'll stop there because listen, what we're going to do for the last 8 minutes, I've just had an email from my next meeting and they've said it's all good. So so what I'll do just to wrap up the this webinar for our audience is I'll just do sort of a bit of a closing statement while I give you all a chance to prepare sort of a 2-minute, this is my vision. And I know you've probably covered it and stuff, but let's pull it out of your kōrero and just put it into a nice little package if you can. I know that's a bit challenging. And I only mean in the sense that you've probably, like everybody else I've talked to, got at least 100 visions. So picking one is tough. Anyway, so kia ora, I'll wrap this up and then we'll go for those last questions. So kia ora koutou, oku hoa, e kōrero ani tēnei rā, Anahira Rawiri, Jade Kake and Jackie Paul. Pai rawa ki te kite ia koutou, pai rawa ki te kōrero ki ēnei kaupapa. It's been really great to talk to you. Thank you so much for supporting this little project and coming on board to talk about this kaupapa, which is really important. And, you know, it looks like we might have to do about 8 more of them in a series to actually get across the issues. So this has been a webinar for the Shift Aotearoa, which is going to be part of our content for VisionWeek. It's available on our website, which is theshiftaotearoa.wordpress.com. And you can find out some more information on Twitter at Shift Aotearoa. And you can also follow Jade and Jackie on Twitter. I'm not sure about you, Anahira, but if you want any more information, email me. I'm on the website, and we're hoping to have some transcripts and stuff and all of that kind of thing available for you. So I'm going to pass back to my participants today with a real simple question, which is what's your vision for the future of housing for Maori in Aotearoa? Jackie.
Kia ora, Brennan, and again, thanks for having us. I was just getting started. But, just really appreciate you creating the space for us to, sit here in kōrero and share lived experiences and knowledge together. I guess really, my vision for the future, I would say not 2030, but 2040, around, for us as a people to exercise mana motuhake, where a child, whether it's a Maori child, grows up in this world knowing that there's not a system set up, or and you're not living in deficit, where they grow up into a society where they're proud to be Maori, to live with Maori, to walk into a place where they have a tūranga waiwai or a place to call home, and live comfortably, to have kai from your local area, to go to school with your local people, and supported by whānau and connected to whenua. So thank you so much, and really hopeful that if we come back in 2040 and reevaluate and see where we're at. Kia ora.
Okay. Kia ora, Jackie. Jade?
What a great conversation. And it just reminds me how much stronger we are together. It's really cool. And I quite like doing this thing with, especially wahine Māori who are in this space, because, we get busy on our hapu stuff and with our own whānau, and it's nice to connect with others that are kind of thinking about some of the bigger picture issues and how we change them, because I know for our whānau we're really focused on just our projects and moving forward on that detailed smaller scale. Cool to connect to the bigger picture. I think my vision is really around hapu rangatiratanga, and that's kind of the language we talk in the north, but it means the same thing as what everyone else is saying. And really we just want to have autonomy over our whenua, wana, and for our people to thrive and be well. And so much of that is fragmented, and that seems like a distant moimoia, but for those of us like my whānau who do still have land, it's just a huge journey to even get back onto the land we never lost, let alone for those whānau that don't have whenua anymore or are living very far away. So we've got a lot of work to do, but I think it really comes back to the return of land and the return of power and the return of resources. And there's so many legislative provisions for this. So the Resource Management Act is quite amazing in terms of how much power could be afforded to mana whenua. We could already be performing a lot of the functions of local government, for example, and the government could give up back a lot more land than they have. There's already the ability to do so, but there's not the will, I think, is the problem. But I do feel optimistic because I can see that within wider New Zealand society, there's much stronger understanding of te tiriti o Waitangi. there's increased awareness of he whakaputanga, when I think awareness was quite low until not too long ago. And I do think that there's been a lot of changing hearts and minds, and people who are not Māori who understand the importance of the issues, embrace their role as tangata tiriti, and really want to see our whānau thriving, want to see Māori thriving, and really see, you know, the treaty relationship as being central to that. So even though there's a lot against us, I'm really hopeful, and I wish to remain hopeful, because I can see the positive changes that have happened. Even just in the last, 10, 20 years, has been a lot. So, yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora, Jade. Awesome.
Yeah, kia ora tātou. I tautoko ngā kōrero te ahiahi nei. Miharo ki te whakarongo ki enei kōrero mō tātou te iwi Māori. For me, I think, what's my aspirations for Māori housing is that every Māori is housed and homed in a place of their choice, in a community where they can thrive. The hope is that my children have options, and they can pick where they want to be, and they can live there confidently and thrive. That's got to be the vision. And then when and then what's the aspiration for iwi is that they have the opportunity to deliver what they think is housing on their lands for their people, but really it's that our people can live comfortably in these lands. There's nowhere for our people to be other than Aotearoa, and we need to give them the opportunity to live comfortably on this whenua, because it is ours. And so that's my hope for the future. And I think in all types of ways, whatever we're doing in this space, it is a template for people, for iwi, for whānau, for hapu that are trying to achieve these same aspirations. What we're doing right now is a template for how they can learn, and they can find things that they like, things that they don't like, so that they can also live on their lands however they want to live. It's not for us to dictate. It's not for me to dictate what happens somewhere else, but it's also not for a government to or someone else to tell me how to live on my lands. So I think that's yeah. I'm getting knocks on doors and kids walking in the house.
All right. Well, we'll let you go then. But not too soon. I don't know what to say. That was amazing. Kia ora. Thank you so much for participating in the way that you guys have. I will try and convene you again, because there's a few things that I'd really like to unpack in more detail. For example, rangatiratanga and mana motuhake, power imbalance, the history, you name it. There's heaps of content. So what I'll do is I'll say thank you once more. Thank you, guys. And I'll stop the recording, and then we can debrief, a little karakia, whakakapi, and I'll let you guys go. All right? Kia ora. Thank you.